Okay, so today I'd like to talk about how we can benchmark across disciplines when we're looking at student data to try and get that really in-depth view of what particular things are going on in particular disciplines and what specific interventions we can make that might not work institution-wide but could really help in that given area. And the reason we do this is because we want to hear what students are actually saying. And specific groups of students have very specific issues, and we want to try and capture that as best as possible and try and avoid this approach of, okay, just collect loads of data, a really large scale, and then do nothing with it. So we'll talk today a little bit about what you can do, some examples from the data, and maybe some next steps in terms of, okay, how can we use more discipline-specific data and approaches? So why do we need to benchmark student voice? We want to set realistic expectations. Okay, so we want to compare engineering students with other engineering students. We want to compare nursing students with other nursing students because they've got very different issues. And we want to sort of really target those improvement plans rather than thinking about institution-wide plans. And between disciplines that might have a lot in common, you might not find it, you might discover that from looking at the data, you can share best practices. Okay, so there's sort of the first issue of, okay, don't do things that don't work for your discipline, but also there might be things that other disciplines close by to you might doing that could be really useful. So, okay, I talked about engineering and nursing there. They're wildly different disciplines. They talk about very, very different things in the student comments. We see that very clearly, but we'll take a little bit of more of a different example perhaps, and we'll look at sort of all the students and sort of biological and sports sciences from our NSS database. That's card code number 3, and all the students from business and management. That's card code number 17. Now we've got about 30,000 comments from the biological and sports science students, about 50,000 comments from the business and management students. So some nice data sets there. This is about the same for all the card codes we work with. But you can say, okay, how do they talk differently about different things? So picked a few highlights. Obviously, there's lots of data to go into, but in terms of teaching on my course, the positive sentiment was about 50% in bio versus 45% in management. In learning opportunities, it was 52% positive sentiment in bio and only 43% in management. So quite a big gap there. So we can see there sort of the teaching and sort of the interacting and the learning part of the course. The biology and sports science students felt much more satisfied with that. Right, they're much more positive sentiment, and this is from all the comments, all those nearly 100,000 comments we've analysed, looking at the sentiment of each sentence. So on the teaching side, we can see that, okay, biology students have this higher benchmark. This is across all the institutions you work with. Now, in terms of organisation and management, the positive sentiment for bio was 23%, whereas it was 30% for management. So while the students of the management courses might not have as high positive sentiment around teaching, they have much higher around organisation and management. And a lot of this comes from a lot of different reasons. It could be the way these different schools and faculties are set up, could be the type of students they attract. There's a million different things, but it's worth looking into and bearing in mind when you make these comparisons that even sort of fairly standard courses have quite wide variations between them in terms of the key things they're talking about. So what do biology students typically like? So again, this is more the teaching side. So they love supportive demonstrators, technicians, that sort of interaction in the labs they really like. They like the research content. Again, the biology students are perhaps more focused on a potential research career. So that comes up again and again in the comments. In terms of common pain points, again, these come down to that organization and of the course. So assessment bunching is a really typical one. Limited feedback, right, on reports. Very biology specific one we see again and again is around sort of safety and safety briefings and getting the same safety briefing 75 times. Now, it might be required, but again, that's a common thing that comes up around sort of the organization, and duplication of content is a big one in terms of bringing down those organization scores. In terms of business students, they always mention sort of the scheduling and the flexibility with a lot of courses where there's lots of case studies, lots of people brought in. lots of group projects, so soft skills that are well organized, well administered. So again, these are they're related to teaching, but they're also heavy onto that organization side. And common pain points we see from business and management students, typically sort of very large numbers, overcrowded lecture halls, right? Is a common thing, the sort of the sheer numbers, staff student ratios, things like that. But also, again, maybe the nature of the area, the discipline, but it's the assessment briefs themselves, the sort of structure of the assessments, things like that. Again, come up with common pain points. But this is just from looking through all these comments. Again, we analyze them automatically and sort of able to generate these insights, really pull out these key areas for all the different disciplines. This is just two I picked off the top of my head. So how do we use these sort of discipline benchmarks? We can sort of see what disciplines have in common with each other and attack those things at institutional level, and then find out what specific issues they have and tackle those at a lower level. And it really helps to sort of, we've got limited resources, limited time, really put our efforts where they are best used and make the biggest impact on the students' education.